The breakfast dishes were still scattered across the counter when Diana Zimmerman heard the crash from upstairs, followed by her 8-year-old daughter's mortified shriek. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and reminded herself that moving to this new neighborhood was supposed to be a fresh start, not an immediate disaster on day 3. "Mom," Sophie's voice echoed down the stairs. "The box with all my art supplies just fell out the window." Diana raced up to Sophie's new bedroom, finding her daughter leaning out the second-story window, looking down at the neighbor's pristine lawn where tubes of paint, brushes, and glitter had exploded across the grass like some kind of abstract art installation. The cardboard box had apparently been balanced precariously on the windowsill while Sophie tried to organize her room. "Please tell me that's not the yard with the perfectly trimmed hedges," Diana said, joining her daughter at the window. "It's definitely that yard," Sophie whispered. The house next door was a beautiful 2-story colonial that made Diana's modest home look like its smaller, less successful sibling. Everything about it screamed expensive taste and careful maintenance. And now, it had a rainbow explosion of acrylic paint decorating its lawn. "Come on," Diana said, grabbing her daughter's hand. "We're going to apologize and clean it up before anyone notices." They hurried outside, and Diana was on her hands and knees trying to scrape up a particularly stubborn glob of purple paint when she heard footsteps approaching. She looked up to find a man standing there, and her first thought was that he looked like he'd stepped out of a business magazine. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that was slightly messy in a way that suggested he'd been running his hands through it. He wore jeans and a simple gray shirt, but something about the way he carried himself suggested he was more accustomed to suits and boardrooms. "I can explain," Diana started, scrambling to her feet. Sophie hid behind her mother's legs. The man's expression was hard to read. He surveyed the damage to his lawn, then looked at Diana, then down at the small face peeking out from behind her. "I'm guessing you're the new neighbors," he said. His voice was deep, controlled. "Diana Zimmerman. This is my daughter Sophie. We moved in 3 days ago, and I promise we're not usually this destructive." "The box was on the windowsill, and it just fell," he finished. "I have a 7-year-old son. I'm familiar with things falling, breaking, and generally ending up where they shouldn't be." He crouched down to Sophie's level. "What kind of art do you make?" Sophie emerged slightly from behind Diana. "Paintings mostly, and drawings. I'm sorry about your grass, mister." "It's Xavier," he said, standing back up and extending his hand to Diana. "Xavier Northwood." Diana shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the calluses that suggested he didn't spend all his time behind a desk. "I'll pay for any lawn damage, of course, and professional cleaning if the paint doesn't come out." "It's grass," Xavier said with a slight shrug. "It grows back. But I'll help you clean it up. My son Marcus is at soccer practice, so I've got time." They spent the next 30 minutes on their hands and knees, scraping up paint and art supplies. Diana learned that Xavier had moved to the neighborhood 2 years ago after his divorce, that he worked long hours but tried to be home for Marcus whenever possible, and that he had absolutely no artistic ability whatsoever. "Marcus tried to teach me to draw a dog once," Xavier said, dropping another paint-covered paper towel into the garbage bag. "It looked like a potato with legs." Sophie giggled, and Diana felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. She'd been so worried about making a good first impression in this new neighborhood, and instead she'd literally thrown paint all over her neighbor's property. But Xavier didn't seem angry, just patient and surprisingly understanding. "I work at the community center," Diana offered. "I run their after-school art program. That's actually why we have so many supplies." "The Riverside Community Center?" Xavier asked, looking up with interest. That's the one. Do you know it? I do, he said, but didn't elaborate further. Marcus might like your program. He's been asking to try more activities. We'd love to have him, Deanna said. First class is free if he wants to test it out. Xavier nodded, and for a moment their eyes met over the paint-splattered grass. Deanna felt something flutter in her chest that she firmly told herself was just embarrassment over the situation. She'd been single for 3 years since her ex-husband walked out, and she'd gotten good at ignoring any attraction she might feel toward men. Sophie came first always. They finished cleaning just as a silver SUV pulled into Xavier's driveway. A boy with Xavier's dark hair and bright, curious eyes jumped out, followed by a woman who Deanna assumed was the ex-wife. But the woman just waved and drove off, and Marcus came running over with a soccer ball under his arm. "Dad, who's this?" Marcus asked, looking at Sophie with open curiosity. "These are our new neighbors," Xavier said. "Deanna and Sophie Zimmerman. Sophie's 8, same grade as you." "Cool," Marcus said. "Do you like soccer?" Sophie wrinkled her nose. "Not really, I like art." "I'm terrible at art," Marcus said cheerfully. "But I'm really good at soccer and video games." "Do you have any video games?" "Some," Sophie said, warming up. "Do you want to see our house? We still have a lot of boxes, but my room is mostly done now. Except for the art supplies that fell out the window." Marcus looked at the remaining paint stains on the grass and grinned. "That's awesome. I dropped a whole container of slime on our driveway last month and Dad had to pressure wash it." The two kids ran off toward Deanna's house, chattering like old friends, leaving the adults standing in the yard. Xavier had a slight smile on his face as he watched them go. "Well, that was easy," Deanna said. "Kids are better at making friends than adults," Xavier observed. He picked up the garbage bag. "I should let you get back to unpacking, but if you need anything, we're right next door." "Thank you," Deanna said, "for being so understanding about this." "Everyone deserves a second chance," Xavier said. Something in his tone suggested he wasn't just talking about paint on the lawn. Deanna went inside to find Sophie and Marcus already deep in conversation about their favorite cartoon shows. She made them snacks and listened to them laugh, feeling for the first time since the move that maybe this new start would work out after all. Over the next 2 weeks, Sophie and Marcus became inseparable. They walked to and from school together, played in each other's yards, and seemed to bring out the best in one another. Marcus was outgoing and adventurous, pulling Sophie out of her shell. Sophie was thoughtful and creative, showing Marcus how to see the world in new ways. And inevitably, Deanna and Xavier started spending more time together too. It started with coordinating pickups and drop-offs, then progressed to quick conversations over the fence, and eventually turned into coffee on Saturday mornings while the kids played. Deanna learned that Xavier was CEO of Northwood Construction, a company that had grown from a small family business into one of the largest construction firms in the state. He'd taken over from his father 5 years ago and had been working 70-hour weeks trying to prove himself until his marriage fell apart, and he realized his son needed him more than the company did. "I still work too much," Xavier admitted one morning, sitting at Deanna's kitchen table while Sophie and Marcus built an elaborate fort in the living room. "But I'm trying to find better balance. Marcus deserves a dad who's actually present." "Sophie used to say I was always tired," Deanna said, refilling their coffee cups. "When I was married to her father, I worked 2 jobs trying to keep us afloat while he chased one failed business idea after another. After the divorce, I finally went back to school, got my degree in art education. The community center job doesn't pay much, but I'm home for Sophie when she needs me." "That's what matters," Xavier said. He had a way of looking at her when she talked that made Deanna feel like he was actually listening, not just waiting for his turn to speak. It was disarming. "Your turn to host dinner Wednesday," Deanna asked, changing the subject before she could think too much about how nice it was to have an adult conversation. "Wednesday works. Marcus has been asking if we can do taco night." They'd fallen into an easy routine of sharing dinners a few times a week. It was practical, with both of them being single parents, and the kids loved it. Deanna told herself that was the only reason she looked forward to those evenings, not because of the way Xavier rolled up his sleeves when he cooked, or how he threw his head back when he really laughed. On Wednesday, Deanna and Sophie walked over to Xavier's house at 6. Marcus answered the door wearing an apron that said future chef and wielding a wooden spoon like a sword. "We're making fish tacos," he announced proudly. "I helped season everything." The house smelled amazing, and Deanna followed the scent to the kitchen where Xavier was managing multiple pans with the focused efficiency of someone who'd learned to cook out of necessity, but had gotten good at it along the way. "Can I help?" Deanna asked. "You can keep me company," Xavier said. "Everything's under control. Marcus, why don't you show Sophie your new soccer trophy?" The kids raced off, and Deanna hopped up onto the counter, something she wouldn't normally do in someone else's kitchen, but Xavier's house had started to feel comfortable and familiar. "That's the third trophy this season," Deanna said. "He's really talented." "He loves it," Xavier said, flipping the fish with practiced ease. "I'm trying to encourage his interests without being one of those overbearing sports parents. It's a fine line." "You're doing great," Deanna said. "Marcus is a good kid. Happy, confident. That's because of you." Xavier glanced at her, and for a moment something shifted in the air between them. Deanna felt her breath catch, but then the timer went off and Xavier turned back to the stove. They had dinner on the back deck, the four of them crowded around Xavier's outdoor table. Marcus told terrible jokes that had Sophie in giggles. Xavier and Deanna swapped stories about their workdays. It felt like family, which should have set off alarm bells in Deanna's head, but instead just felt warm and right. After dinner, the kids asked to watch a movie, and Deanna agreed to stay for another hour. They ended up on the couch, Sophie curled against Deanna's side and Marcus sprawled on the floor. Xavier sat on the other end of the couch, close enough that Deanna was hyper-aware of him, far enough that they maintained propriety. Halfway through the movie, Sophie fell asleep. Deanna stroked her daughter's hair, and when she looked up, she found Xavier watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. "She's had a tough few years," Deanna said quietly. "The divorce hit her hard. She used to be more outgoing, but she turned inward after her dad left. Being here, having a friend like Marcus, I think it's helping her come back to herself." "Marcus was the same way," Xavier said. "His mother and I tried to make the divorce as easy as possible, but he still struggled. Having Sophie around has been good for him. He talks more now, laughs more." "They're good for each other," Deanna agreed. "Yeah," Xavier said, but he was still looking at Deanna, not at the kids. The moment stretched between them, loaded with possibility. Deanna felt her heart rate pick up. It had been so long since she'd felt attracted to someone, and even longer since that attraction seemed mutual. But she had to be careful. Sophie's well-being came first, and getting involved with their neighbor, with Marcus's dad, would complicate everything if it didn't work out. She stood up, careful not to wake Sophie. "I should get her home and into bed." Xavier nodded and gently scooped Sophie up. She murmured in her sleep but didn't wake as he carried her next door. Deanna unlocked her front door, and Xavier carried Sophie all the way up to her bedroom, laying her down with surprising gentleness. Deanna removed her daughter's shoes and pulled the blanket up. They walked back downstairs together, and at the front door, Xavier paused. "Deanna, I've been meaning to ask you something," he started. Her heart jumped. "Yes, the community center is hosting that fundraiser gala next month, right? I saw the flyers." "Oh," Deanna said, trying not to feel disappointed. "Yes, it's our biggest event of the year. We're trying to raise money for renovations and new equipment." "I'd like to attend," Xavier said. "Northwood Construction could be a sponsor. It's a cause I care about." "That would be amazing," Deanna said. "Every contribution helps." "Good," Xavier said. He met her eyes. "And maybe you'd like to sit at my table at the gala." Diana's breath caught. That was definitely not just a business proposition. "I'd like that," she said. Xavier smiled, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Good. I'll see you this weekend." "Saturday morning coffee," Deanna confirmed. She closed the door behind him and leaned against it, her heart racing. This was happening. Something was happening between them, and she had no idea if that was wonderful or terrifying or both. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work, kids, and an increasing number of casual moments with Xavier that didn't feel casual at all. Deanna found herself thinking about him at odd times during the day. The way he listened when she talked about her art program. How he was firm but patient with Marcus. The rare, genuine smiles that transformed his serious face. She was falling for him, and that realization scared her more than she wanted to admit. Sophie, meanwhile, had blossomed. She came home from school chattering about her day, excited to show Deanna her schoolwork and tell her about what she and Marcus had done at recess. Deanna's daughter was happy again, truly happy, and Deanna would do anything to protect that. Which was why she kept things strictly friendly with Xavier, even as her feelings grew stronger. The gala arrived on a Friday night in early October. Diana had splurged on a new dress, a deep blue that made her feel elegant and confident. She'd arranged for Sophie to have a sleepover at her friend Emma's house, with Emma's parents promising to supervise carefully. Diana arrived at the hotel ballroom where the fundraiser was being held and immediately felt underdressed despite her new outfit. The room was full of women in designer gowns and men in expensive suits. She spotted several local business owners and even the mayor. This was bigger than she'd realized. "Deanna." She turned to find Xavier walking toward her, and her mouth went dry. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and made him look even more commanding than usual. His hair was neatly styled, and he looked every inch the successful CEO. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes warm as they took her in. "You clean up pretty well yourself," Deanna managed. He offered his arm and she took it, letting him guide her to a table near the front. She recognized several names on the place cards of other attendees at their table, all significant donors or local VIPs. "Xavier, I didn't realize you were such a major sponsor," Deanna said, noticing the company name on the sponsorship banner. "Northwood Construction believes in giving back to the community," Xavier said. "And I believe in what you're doing at the center. You're changing kids' lives, Deanna." She felt warmth spread through her chest. Before she could respond, the community center director appeared, thanking Xavier profusely for his generous donation. Apparently, Northwood Construction had contributed enough to fund half the renovation project. Deanna stared at Xavier as the director moved on to greet other guests. "Half the renovation? Xavier, that's incredible," he shrugged, looking slightly uncomfortable with the attention. "It's important work. Marcus talks about your art program all the time. He's making things now, bringing home drawings. You're teaching him that creativity matters, not just sports and grades." "He's been taking the class?" Deanna asked, surprised. "For 2 weeks now. He wanted it to be a surprise to get good enough to show you what he's learned." Deanna's throat tightened with emotion. She touched Xavier's arm. "Thank you for the donation, for supporting the center, for everything." Xavier covered her hand with his, the touch sending electricity through her. "Deanna, I need to tell you something," but the lights dimmed, signaling the start of the program. Xavier's words hung unfinished between them as they took their seats. The evening passed in a pleasant blur of speeches, a catered dinner, and a silent auction. Deanna found herself relaxing, enjoying the rare adult evening out. Xavier was attentive without being overbearing, making sure she met important potential donors, introducing her to people who could help expand the center's programs. When the dancing started, Xavier stood and offered his hand. "May I?" Deanna let him lead her to the dance floor. She'd expected him to be stiff and formal, but he was a surprisingly good dancer, confident and smooth as he guided her through the steps. "Where did a construction CEO learn to dance like this?" Deanna asked. "My mother insisted on lessons when I was 12, Xavier admitted. "I hated every minute until I realized girls were impressed by guys who could actually dance." Deanna laughed. "Practical motivation. The best kind," Xavier said, pulling her slightly closer. "Deanna, what I was trying to say earlier, Xavier Northwood, I thought that was you." They turned to find a beautiful woman approaching, her red dress eye-catching and expensive. She smiled at Xavier with obvious familiarity. "Veronica," Xavier said, his tone polite but not warm. "Deanna, this is Veronica Hayes. She's on the board of several local charities. Veronica Deanna Zimmerman, she runs the art program at the community center." "How lovely," Veronica said, barely glancing at Deanna. "Xavier, we missed you at the Children's Hospital Gala last month. Everyone was asking about you." "I was at Marcus's soccer championship," Xavier said. "Of course," Veronica said. "Still, you should come to our events more often. There are so many people who'd love to see you." Her hand rested on Xavier's arm, possessive and familiar. Deanna felt a twist in her stomach. This woman knew Xavier from his social circle, the world of galas and charity boards and high society that Deanna definitely did not belong to. Veronica was polished and sophisticated, exactly the kind of woman someone like Xavier should be with. "Excuse me," Deanna said, pulling away from Xavier. "I should check on the auction results." She escaped before Xavier could stop her, weaving through the crowd toward the silent auction tables. She stared blindly at the bid sheets, trying to collect herself. What was she thinking, imagining something could happen between her and Xavier? They were from completely different worlds. She was a community center art teacher living paycheck to paycheck. He was a millionaire CEO. Tonight was fun, but it wasn't real life. Diana. Xavier had followed her. Of course he had. "Sorry, I just needed a moment," Deanna said, not meeting his eyes. "Veronica is just someone I know from the business circuit," Xavier said quietly. "There's nothing between us, there never has been." "It's not about her," Deanna said. "Xavier, tonight has been wonderful. But this isn't real, is it? This world of expensive galas and major donations. My world is finger painting with 7-year-olds and scraping together money for art supplies." Xavier stepped closer, his voice low and intense. "Your world is the one that matters. You're making a real difference in kids' lives every single day. This," he gestured at the ballroom, "this is just writing checks. What you do takes real passion and dedication." "But we're so different, we're both single parents doing our best for our kids," Xavier interrupted. "We both know what it's like to work hard and put family first. We both understand sacrifice and commitment. Deanna, we're not that different at all." She finally looked up at him, finding his dark eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I've been trying not to feel this way about you," Xavier continued. telling myself it would complicate things with the kids, that it's too risky. But Diana, I can't stop thinking about you. The way you laugh at Marcus's terrible jokes, how you light up when you talk about art, the way you love your daughter with everything you have. You're extraordinary. Diana's heart was pounding. Xavier, you don't have to say anything right now, he said. I just needed you to know how I feel. Whatever you decide, we'll still be neighbors, our kids will still be friends. But I had to tell you the truth. Before Diana could respond, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, grateful for the distraction, then froze when she saw Emma's mother's name on the screen. I have to take this, she said, stepping away. Hello, Diana, I'm so sorry to bother you, Emma's mother said. Sophie's fine, but she's really upset. She says her stomach hurts, but I think she's just homesick. Would you be able to come get her? Of course, Diana said immediately. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up and turned to Xavier. Sophie needs me, I have to go. I'll drive you, Xavier said immediately. You don't have to, Diana, you've had wine with dinner. Let me drive you, please. She nodded, grateful. They collected their things and headed out to the parking garage. Xavier's car was exactly what she'd expect from a successful CEO. A sleek black luxury sedan that probably cost more than Diana made in 2 years. The drive was quiet, tension from their interrupted conversation filling the space between them. Diana directed Xavier to Emma's house, where Sophie was waiting on the front steps, looking small and miserable. Mommy, she said, running to Diana and burying her face in her mother's stomach. I missed you. My tummy hurt. It's okay, baby, Diana said, stroking her daughter's hair. Let's get you home. Sophie looked up and noticed Xavier. Mr. Northwood, what are you doing here? I drove your mom, Xavier said gently. Hop in, kiddo. Sophie climbed into the back seat, and Diana settled beside her, holding her daughter close. By the time they pulled into Diana's driveway, Sophie was already half asleep. I've got her, Xavier said, once again lifting Sophie carefully and carrying her inside. Diana unlocked the door, and Xavier navigated the stairs like he'd done it 100 times before, laying Sophie gently in her bed. Diana helped her daughter change into pajamas, and Sophie was asleep before Diana even turned off the light. Downstairs, Xavier was waiting by the front door. They stood there in the dim hallway, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Thank you, Diana said, for tonight, for the donation, for helping with Sophie. Diana, about what I said earlier. I feel the same way, Diana blurted out. About you. I've been feeling it for weeks, and I've been terrified because what if this doesn't work out? What if we mess up what the kids have? But Xavier, I can't stop thinking about you either. Xavier closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hand coming up to cup her face. Then stop fighting it. Let's see where this goes, slowly, Diana said. For the kids' sake, we have to be careful. Slowly, Xavier agreed. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. Can I kiss you, Diana? Yes, she whispered. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, like they were both afraid of breaking the spell. But then Xavier's arms came around her, pulling her closer, and Diana melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt. The kiss deepened, years of loneliness and caution falling away as they finally gave in to what they'd both been feeling. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Xavier rested his forehead against hers again. I should go, he said, though he made no move to leave. You should, Diana agreed, not letting go. He kissed her once more, soft and sweet, then forced himself to step back. Dinner tomorrow, all 4 of us. Perfect, Diana said. She watched from the doorway as he walked back to his house, and when he turned to wave, she felt like a teenager with her first crush. This was crazy and scary and absolutely wonderful. The next morning, Sophie bounced into Diana's bedroom and jumped on the bed. Mom, Marcus texted me. Can we go over for pancakes? Diana checked her phone and found a message from Xavier. Marcus is demanding pancakes for his new friend. Join us. Diana smiled and typed back, be there in 30 minutes. They walked over to find Xavier and Marcus already in the kitchen, mixing batter and arguing good-naturedly about whether chocolate chips or blueberries made better pancakes. Both, Sophie declared, settling herself at the kitchen counter. Obviously. She's right, Xavier said, winking at Diana over Sophie's head. Why choose? They made ridiculous pancakes covered in both chocolate chips and blueberries, plus whipped cream and syrup. The kids got sugar high and silly, and Diana laughed until her stomach hurt at their antics. After breakfast, Marcus asked if Sophie wanted to practice soccer with him in the backyard, and the kids raced outside. Xavier pulled Diana into the living room, where they could keep an eye on the kids through the window but have some privacy. I couldn't sleep last night, Xavier admitted. Kept thinking about kissing you. Me too, Diana said. She sat on the couch and Xavier settled beside her, close but not quite touching. How do we do this? Xavier asked. We need to be smart about it for Marcus and Sophie. We take it slow, Diana said. Keep things normal for them while we figure out what this is between us. They're best friends and we can't mess that up. Agreed, Xavier said. So we date, but separately from the kids at first. They don't need to know until we're sure this is serious. Right, Diana said, trying to ignore the flutter of hope at the word serious. We're already spending time together anyway, so nothing has to change from their perspective. Except I get to do this, Xavier said, leaning over to kiss her. It was soft and sweet, and Diana sighed happily against his lips. They were interrupted by Marcus yelling, "Goal!" from the backyard, and they broke apart laughing. Over the next month, Diana and Xavier fell into a new routine. During the week, they maintained their usual friendly neighbor dynamic, coordinating kid logistics and sharing meals. But they started texting constantly, long conversations that stretched late into the night after the kids were asleep. Diana learned that Xavier loved terrible action movies, that he'd wanted to be an architect before taking over the family business, and that he made her laugh harder than she had in years. On weekends, when the kids were at activities or with friends, Xavier and Diana stole time together. Coffee dates that turned into long walks. Lunch at a restaurant in the next town over where they were unlikely to run into anyone they knew. They were careful, aware that their kids were perceptive, and this needed to stay private until they were ready. But it was getting harder to hide how she felt, Diana realized. When Xavier looked at her across the dinner table with warmth in his eyes, or when his hand would brush hers while they cleaned up the kitchen, she wanted to lean into it instead of maintaining careful distance. 3 weeks into their secret relationship, Diana's car broke down. Xavier insisted on driving her to work, which meant getting up an hour early to handle kid breakfast and school drop-offs before taking Diana across town to the community center. You don't have to do this every day, Diana protested on the third morning. I can take the bus. Diana, I'm driving right past here to get to my office, Xavier said. Besides, this gives us time alone. He had a point. The morning drives became one of Diana's favorite parts of the day. Just the two of them talking and laughing before the demands of work and parenting took over. On Friday morning, Xavier pulled up to the community center, but didn't unlock the doors immediately. Come to dinner with me tonight, he said. A real date, just the two of us. Marcus is sleeping over at his friend's house. Sophie has a sleepover too, Diana said, smiling. A real date sounds perfect. Xavier picked her up at 7, and Diana had spent way too long picking out an outfit, settling on a simple black dress that made her feel confident. Xavier's eyes lit up when he saw her. "You look incredible," he said. He took her to an Italian restaurant with soft lighting and intimate tables. They shared pasta and wine and talked about everything except kids and logistics. Xavier told her about his dreams of expanding his company into sustainable building practices, and Diana described her hopes of one day opening her own art school. "You should do it," Xavier said seriously. "You're an incredible teacher, Diana. You have a gift for connecting with kids and making them believe in themselves." "It's just a dream," Diana said. "I don't have the capital or the business experience. Dreams become reality when you work toward them," Xavier said. "I believe in you." The simple statement made Diana's eyes sting with unexpected tears. Her ex-husband had dismissed her ambitions as impractical fantasies. Having someone take her seriously, support her goals, felt revolutionary. After dinner, Xavier drove them to a lookout point overlooking the city lights. They sat in the car, talking and laughing and eventually kissing until Diana's head was spinning. "I'm falling in love with you," Xavier said quietly, his hand cupping her face. "I know we said we'd take this slow, but Diana, I need you to know how serious I am about this. About you." Diana's heart was racing. "I'm falling in love with you too. It terrifies me." "Me too," Xavier admitted, "but the good kind of terrified, the kind that means something real is happening." He kissed her again, deep and slow, and Diana let herself fall into it, into him, into the possibility of something wonderful. They started seeing each other more openly after that, though they still hadn't told the kids. Diana would stay at Xavier's house after the kids went to bed, and they'd curl up on the couch watching movies. Xavier would come over on his lunch breaks just to steal a few minutes alone with her. They were building something real, something that felt solid and lasting. But keeping it secret was becoming increasingly difficult. "Mom, are you and Mr. Northwood dating?" Diana nearly dropped the plate she was washing. Sophie sat at the kitchen table doing homework, her expression too knowing for an 8-year-old. "What makes you ask that, honey?" Diana managed. "You smile at your phone a lot when you're texting him," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "And you wear your nice clothes when you know we're going to see him, and you hold hands sometimes when you think Marcus and I aren't looking." Diana dried her hands and sat down beside her daughter. "So much for keeping it secret. How would you feel if Mr. Northwood and I were dating?" Diana asked carefully. Sophie considered this seriously. "Would that mean Marcus would be like my brother?" "Not exactly, but you'd probably see even more of each other than you already do." "Cool," Sophie said. "I like Mr. Northwood. He's nice to you and he makes you laugh. You should marry him." Diana nearly choked. "Sophie, we've only been dating for a little while, but you love him, right?" Sophie asked. "I can tell." Diana looked at her daughter, this perceptive, wonderful little human who'd been through so much. "Yeah, baby, I do love him. Does that bother you?" "No," Sophie said. She hesitated, then added quietly, "Dad never made you smile like Mr. Northwood does. I was little, but I remember. You were always sad when Dad was around." Diana pulled Sophie into a hug, her heart aching. "I'm happy now, sweetheart. Really happy." "Good," Sophie said, squeezing back. "Can we have pizza for dinner?" The subject change was so typical of her daughter that Diana laughed. Crisis apparently averted, that evening Diana texted Xavier, "Sophie knows. We need to talk to the kids." Xavier called immediately. "Marcus figured it out too. Apparently we're not as subtle as we thought." "How did he react?" Diana asked. "He asked if this meant you'd come to all his soccer games," Xavier said, sounding amused, "and if Sophie would be his sister. I told him we'd talk about it as a family." "Tomorrow," Diana suggested. "Let's sit them both down and be honest." The next afternoon, all 4 of them gathered in Xavier's living room. The kids sat together on one couch, Diana and Xavier on the other, and there was a moment of awkward silence before Xavier cleared his throat. "So guys, your mom and I want to talk to you about something important," Xavier started. "You're dating," Marcus said immediately. "We know." "Right," Xavier said, exchanging an amused glance with Deanna. "We are. We wanted to make sure you're both okay with that. Are you going to get married?" Marcus asked. "We haven't talked about that yet," Deanna said carefully. "We're still figuring things out, but we wanted you both to know that nothing changes with you two. You're still best friends, no matter what happens with Mr. Northwood and me. Can we call you Deanna now instead of Mrs. Zimmerman?" Marcus asked Deanna. "Sure, honey." "And can I still call you Mr. Northwood?" Sophie asked Xavier. "I'm used to it." "Whatever makes you comfortable," Xavier said warmly. "Can we go play now?" Marcus asked. "This is boring," Xavier laughed. "Yeah, go ahead." The kids ran off, apparently completely unfazed by the revelation. Deanna looked at Xavier and shook her head in disbelief. "That was anticlimactic," she said. "They're happy," Xavier said, pulling her close. "That's what matters. And now I can do this whenever I want." He kissed her, slow and sweet, and Deanna smiled against his lips. "I like this much better than sneaking around," she admitted. Things shifted after that. It felt more real, more official, having the kids know. Deanna and Xavier were more open with affection, holding hands while they watched the kids play, stealing kisses in the kitchen. The kids teased them sometimes, but it was good-natured and happy. Deanna's favorite moments were the quiet evenings when all four of them would pile on the couch to watch a movie, Sophie and Marcus chattering between them, Xavier's arm around her shoulders. It felt like family in the best possible way. But Deanna couldn't shake a small thread of worry. Everything was moving so fast, and Xavier's world was still so different from hers. She loved him, completely and terrifyingly, but she wondered if that would be enough when the initial romance faded. 2 months after they told the kids, Xavier invited Deanna to his company's annual holiday party. It was being held at an exclusive country club, and the invitation made Deanna's stomach twist with anxiety. "I don't think I should go," Deanna said. They were cleaning up after dinner, the kids playing video games in the other room. "That's your work world. I'd be out of place." "You'd be with me," Xavier said firmly. "Deanna, you're part of my life now. I want you there." "What about people like Veronica?" Deanna asked. "Your business associates and high society friends. They're going to wonder what you're doing with a community center art teacher." Xavier put down the dish he was drying and turned to face her fully. "First, you're not just anything. You're an incredibly talented educator who's changing kids' lives. Second, I don't care what anyone else thinks. You're the woman I love, and I want you by my side." Deanna bit her lip, still uncertain. "Is this about more than just the party?" Xavier asked gently. "Talk to me." Deanna took a breath. "Sometimes I feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like you're going to wake up and realize you could be with someone from your world, someone who fits better into your life." "Deanna," Xavier said, taking her hands, "you fit perfectly into my life. You fit perfectly with me. I don't want someone from my world, I want you." "But the differences are superficial," Xavier interrupted. "Money, jobs, social circles, that's all surface stuff. What matters is that we share the same values. We both put our kids first. We both work hard and care about making a difference. We both know what it's like to rebuild after everything fell apart, and we love each other. That's what's real, Deanna." She felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you so much it scares me." "I know," Xavier said, pulling her into his arms. "It scares me too, but we're in this together, okay? Whatever comes, we face it as a team." Deanna nodded against his chest, letting herself believe it. She went to the holiday party, wearing a borrowed designer dress from her friend at work and feeling more confident than she expected. Xavier stayed close to her side, introducing her to everyone as his girlfriend with obvious pride. He didn't hide their relationship or make her feel like an outsider. When Veronica approached with her usual proprietary air, Xavier's arm tightened around Deanna's waist. "Veronica, you remember Deanna," Xavier said coolly. "Of course," Veronica said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "How lovely to see you again, Deanna." "You too," Deanna said, matching her polite tone. "Xavier, I wanted to discuss the hospital board nomination," Veronica started, effectively dismissing Deanna. "That's a work matter that can wait until Monday," Xavier said. "If you'll excuse us, they're starting the dancing." He guided Deanna away, and she felt a surge of affection for this man who never made her feel less than, who protected her without being overbearing. "My hero," she teased as they reached the dance floor. "Always," Xavier said, pulling her close. They danced through several songs, and Deanna felt the last of her anxiety fade. This was right. They were right together. When they got home that night, Deanna paid the babysitter and checked on Sophie, who was sound asleep. Xavier had done the same with Marcus, and they met in his kitchen. "Stay," Xavier said quietly. "Just to sleep. I want to wake up with you." Deanna knew she should go home, maintain some boundaries, but she didn't want to. She wanted to fall asleep in Xavier's arms and wake up beside him. So she texted her neighbor, who sometimes watched Sophie, making sure someone was available if Sophie woke up and needed her, then followed Xavier upstairs. They fell asleep tangled together, and Diana felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. This was home, she realized. Not a place, but a person. Xavier was home. Christmas approached, and they decided to spend it together. Deanna and Sophie went Christmas tree shopping with Xavier and Marcus, and they ended up getting 2 trees, one for each house, because the kids couldn't agree on which one was best. They decorated both houses with the kids, drinking hot chocolate and listening to holiday music. Deanna taught Marcus how to make paper snowflakes, and Xavier helped Sophie string lights along her bedroom ceiling. It was chaotic and messy and absolutely perfect. On Christmas Eve, they had dinner at Deanna's house, Sophie and Marcus so excited they could barely sit still. After the kids finally went to bed, Deanna and Xavier sat by her Christmas tree, exchanging gifts. Deanna gave Xavier a painting she'd done of him and Marcus at one of Marcus's soccer games. Xavier stared at it for a long moment, his jaw working with emotion. "Deanna, this is incredible," he said quietly. "I'll treasure this forever." "Your turn," Deanna said. Xavier handed her a small wrapped box, and Deanna's heart started racing. It was too small to be jewelry, but the size and shape made her think she opened it to find a key. "It's to my house," Xavier said. "I want you to feel like it's your home too, both of you, you and Sophie. I know we haven't talked about moving in together or anything official, but I want you to know that whenever you're ready, there's a place for you with us." Diana felt tears spill over. "Xavier, there's more," he said nervously. He pulled out another box, this one clearly containing a ring, and Diana's breath stopped entirely. "I wasn't going to do this tonight," Xavier said. "I had a whole plan for New Year's Eve. But Diana, I love you. I love Sophie. You've both become part of my family, part of my heart. I can't imagine my life without you in it. So I'm asking you now, even though it's probably too soon and we should wait, but I don't want to wait. Deanna Zimmerman, will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a beautiful diamond ring, elegant and perfect. Diana was crying openly now. "Yes," she said. "Yes, absolutely yes." Xavier slipped the ring on her finger, and then they were kissing, laughing and crying at the same time. It was imperfect and spontaneous and absolutely right. "The kids are going to lose their minds," Deanna said when they finally broke apart. "Good minds or bad minds?" Xavier asked, suddenly looking nervous. "Good minds," Deanna assured him. "Sophie's been asking when we're getting married since the day she found out we were dating. They told the kids on Christmas morning." Deanna and Sophie walked over to Xavier's house early, finding Marcus and Xavier already up and making pancakes. "Merry Christmas," Sophie shouted, running to hug Marcus. "Merry Christmas," Xavier said, pulling Deanna close and kissing her thoroughly. "Ready to tell them? Tell us what?" Marcus asked suspiciously. Diana held up her left hand, where the ring sparkled in the morning light. "Mr. Northwood asked me to marry him, and I said yes." Sophie screamed and launched herself at Deanna, nearly knocking her over. Marcus was hugging Xavier, jumping up and down with excitement. "Does this mean we're going to be brothers and sisters?" Marcus asked Sophie. "Something like that," Xavier said, ruffling his son's hair. "We'll be a family." "Best Christmas ever," Sophie declared. They spent the rest of the day opening presents and eating too much food and being gloriously happy. Diana kept looking at the ring on her finger, still half convinced she was dreaming. That evening, after the kids had crashed in a sugar-induced stupor in front of a movie, Diana and Xavier sat together on the couch. "We should probably talk logistics," Diana said. "Do Sophie and I move in here? Do we find a new house together?" "What about schools and Diana?" Xavier interrupted gently. "We have time to figure all that out. Let's just enjoy this for now." "I'm not used to not planning everything," Diana admitted. "I know," Xavier said. "But sometimes the best things happen when we stop planning and just let life unfold." Diana leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body against hers. "I can't believe this is real sometimes. A year ago I was stressed and struggling and so tired all the time. And now I have you and we're getting married, and I'm happier than I ever thought possible." "That's how I feel too," Xavier said. "You and Sophie changed everything for Marcus and me. You made us a family." "We made each other a family," Diana corrected. They started planning the wedding in January, and true to form, they couldn't agree on much. Diana wanted something small and intimate, just close friends and family. Xavier wanted to invite everyone they knew and make it a major celebration. "It's not about showing off," Xavier insisted as they sat at his kitchen table with wedding magazines spread between them. "I want to celebrate this properly. I want everyone to see how happy I am, how much I love you." 200 people is not celebrating properly, it's a circus, Deanna argued. "Xavier, half those people are business associates you barely know." "Fine, 100, Xavier compromised. "That leaves room for the people who actually matter to us," Deanna sighed. "You're impossible. You love me," Xavier said, grinning. "Unfortunately, yes," Deanna said, but she was smiling. They compromised on 150 guests, an outdoor ceremony at a local botanical garden, and a reception under a tent with string lights and flowers. Deanna wanted sunflowers and wildflowers instead of traditional roses, and Xavier wanted a live band instead of a DJ. They agreed on all of it, just happy to be planning a future together. Sophie and Marcus were heavily involved in the planning, offering opinions on everything from the cake flavors to whether they should have a chocolate fountain at the reception. They'd already started calling each other brother and sister, even though the wedding was still months away. Diana had worried about how the kids would adjust to becoming step-siblings, but they made it look effortless. They still bickered sometimes, the way siblings do, but they also protected each other fiercely and were genuinely happy to be becoming family. "I'm glad you're marrying my mom," Sophie told Xavier one afternoon while they were all working in the garden together. "You make her really happy." "She makes me really happy too," Xavier said, glancing over at Deanna with so much love in his eyes that Deanna felt her throat tighten with emotion. "And you're pretty cool," Marcus added to Deanna. "For a girl and a mom." "High praise," Deanna said, laughing. In March, Xavier surprised Deanna with tickets to an art exhibition at a gallery in the city. It was a Saturday afternoon, and they left the kids with Xavier's mother for a few hours. The exhibition was stunning, featuring contemporary artists whose work made Deanna ache with inspiration. Xavier watched her more than he watched the art, smiling at her reactions. "You should show your work," he said as they stood in front of a particularly beautiful landscape painting. "My work is just hobby stuff," Deanna said. "No, it's not," Xavier said firmly. "Deanna, you're incredibly talented. You should be exhibiting your paintings, not just teaching others." "I don't have the connections or the experience," Deanna protested. "But I do," Xavier said. He pulled out his phone and texted someone, then showed Deanna the response. "That's the curator of this gallery. He'd love to see your portfolio. I've already told him about you." Deanna stared at him. "Xavier, you can't just—" "I'm not using influence to get you in the door," Xavier interrupted. "I'm giving you an opportunity to show your work. The rest is up to you and your talent." "But Deanna, you deserve this chance. Let me give it to you." Diana felt overwhelmed. "Why do you believe in me so much?" "Because you're extraordinary," Xavier said simply. "And it's time you started believing it too." 2 weeks later, Diana met with the gallery curator, bringing a portfolio of her paintings. She was nervous, convinced he was only agreeing to see her work because of Xavier's connections. But the curator studied each piece carefully, asking thoughtful questions about her process and inspiration. "These are remarkable," he said finally. "I'd like to include several pieces in our summer showcase. It's a group exhibition featuring emerging local artists." Deanna felt like she might faint. "Really? You're not just saying that because, Miss Zimmerman, I don't stake my gallery's reputation on favors," the curator said dryly. "Your work is strong. You have a unique voice and excellent technical skill. I want to show your paintings because they deserve to be seen." Diana left the gallery in a daze. She called Xavier immediately and he answered on the first ring. "He wants to show my work," Deanna said, still not quite believing it, "in a real exhibition." "That's incredible," Xavier said. "I'm so proud of you, Deanna. We need to celebrate. Dinner tonight, fancy restaurant, just the two of us." They celebrated with champagne and steak, and Deanna felt like she was floating. Everything in her life was coming together in ways she'd never dared to dream about. The wedding was set for June, and as the date approached, Diana found herself getting more nervous. Not about marrying Xavier, she was absolutely certain about that. But about the actual wedding itself, being the center of attention, making sure everything went perfectly. "Breathe," Xavier told her 2 weeks before the wedding. They were doing a final walkthrough at the botanical garden, and Diana was spiraling about seating arrangements. "What if it rains?" Deanna asked. "What if the flowers wilt? What if Xavier kissed her, shutting off the flow of anxious words?" "It's going to be perfect because we'll be getting married. That's all that matters." "You're right," Deanna said, taking a deep breath. "I'm just nervous." "Me too," Xavier admitted. "But the good kind of nervous. The kind that means something important is happening." Deanna smiled and kissed him again. "I love you." "I love you too. Now stop worrying about seating charts and come help me convince Marcus that he has to wear dress shoes, not sneakers, to the wedding." The night before the wedding, Deanna stayed at her house with Sophie while Xavier and Marcus stayed at their place. It was tradition, not seeing each other before the ceremony, and Deanna tried to convince herself she didn't miss falling asleep next to Xavier. "Are you nervous, Mom?" Sophie asked. They were lying in Deanna's bed together, a rare girls' night. "A little," Deanna admitted, "but mostly I'm just excited. Tomorrow I get to marry the man I love and officially make Marcus part of our family." "I'm excited too," Sophie said. I always wanted a brother. And I really like Mr. Northwood. He's nice to us. He loves us very much, Deanna said, hugging her daughter close. Are you going to have more kids? Sophie asked suddenly. I heard Grandma asking Mr. Northwood about it. Deanna blinked, taken off guard. She and Xavier had talked about it briefly, acknowledging they both wanted more children eventually, but they'd agreed to wait and let their current family unit solidify first. Maybe someday, Deanna said carefully. How would you feel about that? I think it would be cool, Sophie said. As long as I'm still your kid, too. Always, Deanna promised. You'll always be my kid, Sophie. Nothing could ever change that. Her daughter fell asleep in her arms, and Deanna lay awake for a while longer, thinking about the future. More kids with Xavier, growing their family, building a life together. It all felt surreal and wonderful. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, not a cloud in the sky. Deanna's hands shook as her friends helped her into her wedding dress, a simple but elegant gown with lace sleeves and a flowing skirt. You look like a princess, Sophie breathed. She was wearing a pale blue flower girl dress and looked adorable. You look pretty beautiful yourself, kiddo, Deanna said. Her friend Emma, who was serving as maid of honor, handed Deanna her bouquet of sunflowers and wildflowers. Ready to do this? So ready, Deanna said. The ceremony was being held in a garden clearing surrounded by blooming flowers and tall trees. Chairs were set up in rows, and Deanna could hear the string quartet warming up. Her stomach was full of butterflies, but the good kind. Sophie went down the aisle first, dropping flower petals with careful concentration. Then Emma gave Deanna's arm a squeeze and walked down herself. The music changed, and everyone stood. Diana walked out alone, having chosen not to be given away by anyone. She was walking toward her future by her own choice, standing on her own 2 feet. But her eyes were locked on Xavier, who waited at the end of the aisle in a perfectly fitted suit, Marcus beside him as best man. Xavier's expression when he saw her made Deanna's breath catch. Pure love and awe, like he couldn't believe she was real. She walked faster, suddenly impatient to reach him to start this next chapter of their lives. She took his hands and Xavier squeezed them gently. The officiant began to speak, but Diana barely heard the words. She was too focused on Xavier, on the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I love you, Xavier mouthed silently, and Diana smiled. They'd written their own vows. Xavier went first, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Deanna, a year ago I was going through the motions of life, focused on work and trying to be a good dad, but not really living. And then you and Sophie moved in next door and everything changed. You reminded me that life is about connection and laughter and love. You made me believe in second chances and new beginnings. You made Marcus smile again, really smile, and you made me want to be better, do better, love better. I promise to support your dreams, to be your partner in everything, to love Sophie like she's my own daughter. I promise to be the man you deserve, today and every day for the rest of our lives. Deanna was crying by the time he finished. She took a shaky breath and began her own vows. Xavier, I was so scared when I moved here. Scared of starting over, scared of letting anyone close again, scared of getting hurt. But you were patient and kind, and you made me feel safe enough to take a chance. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You loved my daughter like she was your own. You showed me that love doesn't have to be complicated or painful, that it can be steady and strong and real. I promise to stand by your side through whatever comes, to love Marcus like he's my own son, to build a life with you that's full of laughter and adventure and art and soccer games and everything in between. I love you, Xavier Northwood, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life showing you just how much. Xavier was crying now too, and when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss was salty with happy tears. The crowd erupted in applause, and Sophie and Marcus were cheering loudest of all. The reception was everything Deanna had hoped for, casual and joyful and full of love. They ate amazing food and danced until their feet hurt. Sophie and Marcus raced around with the other kids, high on cake and excitement. Deanna's art friends mingled with Xavier's business associates, and everyone seemed to be having a wonderful time. Diana's favorite moment came during the parent-child dance. Traditionally, it was father-daughter and mother-son, but they decided to mix it up. Deanna danced with Marcus first, this little boy who'd become her son in all the ways that mattered. "Thanks for marrying my dad," Marcus said seriously as they swayed to the music. "He's way happier now." "Thank you for being such an awesome kid," Deanna said. "I'm lucky to be your stepmom." "You're just my mom now," Marcus said matter-of-factly. "I've got 2 moms, that's pretty cool." Deanna had to blink back tears. Then Xavier swept Sophie onto the dance floor, and Deanna watched her daughter giggle as Xavier spun her around. They were a family, all 4 of them, blended and beautiful and real. Later, Xavier pulled Deanna onto the dance floor for their official first dance as husband and wife. She melted into his arms, swaying to a slow song as the sun set and string lights twinkled overhead. "Happy," Xavier murmured against her hair. "Incredibly," Deanna said. "You?" "More than I knew was possible," Xavier said. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes soft. "Ready to start forever." "With you?" "Absolutely." They left for a short honeymoon the next day, just 4 days at a beach resort while Xavier's mother watched the kids. It was Diana's first real vacation in years, and she spent it sleeping late, making love with her husband, and actually relaxing for the first time since she could remember. "We should talk about logistics when we get back," Xavier said on their last morning. They were having breakfast on their private balcony overlooking the ocean. "Moving, combining households, all of that. I've been thinking about it," Deanna said. "I love your house, but it's yours. What if we sold both houses and found something new together, a fresh start for all of us?" Xavier considered this. "I like that idea. We could find something with a good art studio for you, a big backyard for the kids. Maybe room to grow," Deanna added, feeling suddenly brave. "If we decide to have more children." Xavier's eyes lit up. "You want more kids, eventually," Deanna said. "Not right away. But yes, I'd love to have a baby with you, give Sophie and Marcus a little sibling." Xavier pulled her into his lap and kissed her thoroughly. "I love you so much, Deanna Northwood." "I love you too," Deanna said, still getting used to her new last name. When they returned home, they immediately started house hunting. It took 2 months, but they finally found the perfect place. A large house with 5 bedrooms, a spacious backyard, and a sunroom that would be perfect for Deanna's art studio. They made an offer the same day and were thrilled when it was accepted. Moving and combining households was chaotic. Sophie and Marcus each got their own bedrooms but spent most of their time in the family room anyway, usually fighting over the TV remote. Deanna and Xavier navigated the complexities of merging their lives, figuring out whose couch to keep and where to hang family photos. But gradually, the house became a home. Deanna set up her art studio and started working on pieces for the gallery show. Xavier converted one room into a home office so he could work from home more often. The kids decorated their rooms and invited friends over, filling the house with laughter and noise. Diana's gallery exhibition in August was a huge success. Several of her paintings sold, and she received commissions for custom work. The local newspaper did a feature on her, and suddenly people in the community were recognizing her as an artist, not just a teacher. "I'm so proud of you," Xavier said the night of the exhibition, wrapping his arms around her from behind as she stared at the red, sold dots on several of her paintings. "None of this would have happened without you believing in me," Deanna said, leaning back against him. "Yes, it would have," Xavier said firmly. "Maybe it would have taken longer, but Deanna, you're talented. That was always going to shine through eventually." In September, Marcus started 4th grade and Sophie started 3rd. They were in the same elementary school now, and Marcus had appointed himself Sophie's official protector, making sure no one bothered his sister. Deanna found it endlessly endearing. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work, school, soccer games and art classes, family dinners and movie nights. Deanna had never been happier, and she could see the same contentment in Xavier. He'd cut back his hours at work, learning to delegate more and trust his team. He was home for dinner most nights, present and engaged with their family. One year after the wedding, Deanna walked into the kitchen to find Xavier making breakfast for the kids before school. Marcus was doing homework he'd forgotten about the night before, and Sophie was doodling in the margins of her notebook. It was a perfectly ordinary morning, chaotic and imperfect, and Deanna felt overwhelmed with love for these three people who'd become her whole world. "Morning, beautiful," Xavier said, kissing her as she reached for the coffee pot. "Morning," Deanna said. She took a sip of coffee, then decided now was as good a time as any. "I have news." Xavier looked up from the eggs he was scrambling. "Good news or bad news? Definitely good news," Deanna said. She glanced at the kids who were absorbed in their own activities. "We're pregnant." Xavier froze, the spatula halfway to the pan. "We're what, pregnant?" Deanna repeated, smiling at his stunned expression. "About 8 weeks along. I just got it confirmed yesterday." Xavier set down the spatula and crossed to her in 2 strides, lifting her up and spinning her around. "We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," Deanna confirmed, laughing. The kids looked up at the commotion. "What's happening?" Marcus asked. Xavier set Deanna down but kept his arms around her. "Your mom and I have some exciting news. We're going to have a baby." "You guys are going to be big brother and big sister." Sophie's eyes went huge. "Really? A real baby?" "A real baby," Deanna confirmed. Sophie and Marcus looked at each other. Then both started talking at once, already arguing about whether they wanted a brother or sister and what they should name the baby. Deanna and Xavier laughed, holding each other and watching their children with so much love. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Deanna had some morning sickness in the first trimester, but Xavier was endlessly patient, bringing her crackers in bed and rubbing her back when she felt nauseous. The kids were excited, constantly talking to Diana's growing belly and making plans for when their sibling arrived. They found out they were having a girl at the 20-week ultrasound. Sophie was thrilled to be getting a sister. Marcus pretended to be disappointed, but Diana caught him reading pregnancy books when he thought no one was looking, wanting to be prepared to help. Diana's belly grew, and Xavier became even more attentive and protective. He rearranged his schedule so he could drive her to all her doctor's appointments. He installed the car seat and assembled the crib weeks early. He caught her when she cried over a commercial, hormones making her emotional over everything. "I love you," Deanna told him one night in their 7th month. They were lying in bed, Xavier's hand on her belly feeling the baby kick. "I love you too," Xavier said. "Both of you, all of you. This whole chaotic, wonderful family we've built." The baby arrived on a rainy April morning, 3 days before her due date. Deanna's water broke at 5 in the morning, and Xavier went into controlled CEO mode, getting her to the hospital while calling his mother to come stay with Sophie and Marcus. Labor was long and difficult, but Xavier never left her side, letting her squeeze his hand until his fingers went numb and telling her how strong she was and how much he loved her. After 14 hours, their daughter entered the world with a lusty cry. "She's perfect," Xavier said, tears streaming down his face as the nurse placed their daughter on Diana's chest. "She's so beautiful," Diana whispered, stroking the baby's dark hair. She looked like Xavier, the same nose and chin, but she had Diana's eyes. They named her Emma Grace Northwood. Sophie and Marcus were allowed to visit that evening, and they stared at their baby sister with wonder. "She's so tiny," Marcus whispered, afraid to speak too loud. "Can I hold her?" Sophie asked. Diana helped Sophie sit in the hospital chair and carefully placed Emma in her arms. Sophie looked at the baby with such love and awe that Diana had to wipe away tears. "I'm going to be the best big sister ever," Sophie promised. "I know you will," Diana said. Xavier wrapped his arm around Diana's shoulders, and they watched their 3 children together. A year and a half ago, Diana had been a struggling single mom moving to a new neighborhood, scared and uncertain. Now she had a husband she adored, 3 amazing children, a career that fulfilled her, and a life full of love and laughter and second chances. "Thank you," Diana whispered to Xavier. "For what?" "For believing in me, for loving my daughter, for building this life with me, for everything." Xavier kissed her temple. "Thank you for taking a chance on me, for seeing past the CEO to the man who just wanted to be a good dad and find someone to love. For making me happier than I ever thought I could be." They took Emma home 2 days later to a house full of welcome home balloons and a banner that Sophie and Marcus had made. The adjustment to having a newborn was exhausting, but they navigated it together. Xavier took paternity leave, something he'd never done with Marcus, and devoted himself to helping with nighttime feedings and diaper changes. Sophie and Marcus were endlessly helpful, always wanting to hold their sister or fetch diapers or sing to her when she cried. Diana watched her family with a heart so full she thought it might burst. 3 months after Emma was born, Diana had her first solo art show at the gallery. Xavier insisted she do it despite her protests that it was too soon after the baby. "You've been working toward this for a year," Xavier said. "I'll watch Emma. Your mom friends will help. You deserve this, Diana." The opening night was packed and Diana sold almost every piece. She stood in the gallery in a new dress that actually fit her post-baby body, accepting congratulations and talking about her work, feeling like she'd finally found herself. She was a mother and a wife and an artist, and she didn't have to choose between those identities. She could be all of them, supported by a man who believed in her dreams as much as his own. Xavier arrived halfway through the evening, Emma in a carrier on his chest and Sophie and Marcus on either side of him. Diana's heart swelled at the sight of them, her whole world in one place. "How's it going?" Xavier asked, kissing her. "Amazing," Diana said. 3 more paintings just sold." "That's my talented wife," Xavier said proudly. Sophie tugged on Diana's dress. "Mom, can we get ice cream to celebrate?" "Absolutely," Diana said. They left the gallery together, this family of 5, walking down the street to the ice cream shop. Emma slept peacefully in the carrier. Marcus and Sophie argued about which flavor was best. Xavier held Diana's hand, their fingers intertwined. Diana thought about that first morning when Sophie had accidentally thrown art supplies all over Xavier's lawn. She'd been mortified, certain she'd made the worst possible first impression. But that accident had led to this, to a love she'd never imagined possible, to a family that filled her life with joy and purpose. "What are you thinking about?" Xavier asked, noticing her smile. "Just that I'm glad Sophie's art box fell out the window that day," Diana said. Xavier laughed. "Best property damage I ever experienced." "I love you," Diana said. "I love you too," Xavier said. "Forever." And standing there on the sidewalk with ice cream melting and children laughing and a baby sleeping peacefully between them, Diana knew that forever with this man, with this family, was going to be the greatest adventure of her life. Years later, Diana would look back on this moment as the perfect encapsulation of their life together. Not perfect in the traditional sense, but perfect because it was real and messy and full of love. They'd have more challenges ahead, more late nights and difficult decisions and moments of doubt. But they'd face everything together, this blended family that had become whole. Sophie would grow up to be a confident, talented artist, crediting both her mother and stepfather for believing in her abilities. Marcus would get a soccer scholarship to college, but he'd also take art classes on the side, never forgetting the creativity Diana had helped him discover. Emma would grow up surrounded by love, never knowing a time when this wasn't her family, when Sophie and Marcus weren't her full siblings in every way that mattered. And Diana and Xavier would continue to build their life together, supporting each other through career changes and parenting challenges and all the ups and downs of marriage. They'd have fights and makeups, stressful times and beautiful moments, the full spectrum of a real, lasting relationship. But through it all, they'd have each other. And that, Diana reflected as Xavier squeezed her hand and their children raced ahead to the ice cream shop, was more than she'd ever dared to dream of when she'd moved to this neighborhood looking for a fresh start. She'd found so much more than that. She'd found home,